having trouble starting the stream here. All right, and now we're rolling. Good evening, all. This is W2NDG, Neil in Highland, New York. But first, let's see if there is any emergency traffic. Does anybody have any reason to use the repeater in an emergency? Please come now. All right, no emergencies. Always a good thing. Once again, this is W2NDG, Neil, on the OMARC, Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. We gather here every Sunday night at 8 p.m., talk about things related to science and technology, not necessarily ham radio things, but scientific and tech ideas, concepts, sometimes open discussions. I'm usually here with my co-host, Jim, K2BHM. Jim has been on vacation. We wish him well. I hope you got to watch some of these on replay. But I think Jim will be back next week. If not, then we'll see him the following week. So we have an interesting discussion for tonight, but I'm not sure with the holiday weekend how many people we'll have. So we'll try to keep things simple and interesting. But the way it works here is that I usually explain what we're going to talk about and kick that out around a little bit and then ask for check-ins, and then we go around and discuss it. So let me drop again. All right. This is Science and Technology Net number 12. Well, we've been doing this for 12 weeks. It's hard to believe, but yes, we've been here that long talking about lots of different things. Well, tonight, I'm going to take a little bit of a turn, and I want to talk because part of science has to do with fact, technology. They teach us in school at a pretty early age. Usually, I remember it was with geometry when they started talking about proofs. And when you're dealing with things like math and science, we're not always dealing with theories, although some of science is. But usually the things that they teach us are things that have been proven as fact. Now, throughout history, sometimes certain beliefs, certain things tend to not be based in fact. And we're talking more about technology and science and sometimes the marketing of technology and science and the things that they try to get us to believe to get a product into our hands. Companies have been very ingenious with this. So I was going to go off in a couple of different directions tonight and talk about a couple of things, and then we can just go around and discuss that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take check-ins first. So I have a barometer of who's out there, and then we'll add to that list as soon as I'm done explaining a couple of the things that I researched before the net tonight. So let's take some check-ins. To check into the net, you can give me your call sign, please, your first name, and your location. And our YouTube watchers, you can also tell me that you're here in the chat if you want to be included in the rotation with questions, and you can do that now. So, all right, check-ins. Please come now with your call sign, your name, and your location.
This is KD2BAH, Jim Poughkeepsie. Now the rest of you chime in. Here is KB2GGF, Matt Inkerhunction.
All right. Real quick, is there anybody else who wants to check in tonight? Well, that's okay. I just wanted to see who was out there. We'll keep things fairly simple tonight. This might be a quick net. So let me do a little bit of talking about what I'm talking about when I talk about marketing lies and things that people used to believe. I have a few examples that I gathered, and I'll run through those real quick, and then we'll see if there's anybody else who wants to check in, and then we'll just throw it around, and I think we'll be out of here by 9 o'clock tonight. So let me drop. This is Neil, W2NDG, on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about, and I'm sitting here staring at this example, and I assume, I know Jim has at least a computer or two in his shack where he's sitting. Matt, I don't know if you keep a computer next to your radio or not, but you might have a typewriter, which is also an example of this. And in fact, it's where this one comes from. Let's talk about QWERTY, Kwerty. Obviously, the name comes from the first 6 letters of the typewriter after the tab key on most. And for years, it's always been told that the reason why the keyboard is arranged in that order is because it was the most efficient layout that they could find for people for, typing very fast. And if you know some people in your life that went through training and became professionals, some people do type very, very fast, and it's pretty amazing how fast people can type. But the idea that the QWERTY keyboard layout is the most efficient layout is actually a lie. And it's not even a mistake. It was actually on purpose. Let me drop. The original typewriter, the Remington number 1, was designed by a number of different people. And there was an engineer involved, a Matthias Schwalbach, who was a German clockmaker. And his final design had some issues where if certain keys were pressed in sequence quickly, they would jam, and it had to do with the way the mechanism fired the type heads at the paper. So one of the principals in the company that invented the original Remington number 1, James Densmore, went to his son-in-law, who was a teacher, and talked to him about statistics and letter frequency and letter occurrences, and had him help him redesign the layout so that it was rare that consecutive keys in the typing drum, which was the mechanism, would be pressed. So like originally the S and the T were next to each other in the drum, and they moved them so that they weren't. And it was not that they were next to each other physically, but when pressed in succession, they would arrive at the same point at the paper and jam. So the QWERTY layout was the least efficient layout, and it would force people to type slower because statistically, the letters that you would normally press in sequence were moved to inconvenient places on the keyboard. So that's a marketing falsehood for you there. And it's just amazing that it was never re-engineered and redesigned, and we still use it today. Let me drop. So here's another great one. And everybody's heard the term Ponzi scheme, and not everybody knows that it's actually named for somebody, Charles Ponzi, who was an Italian immigrant, and he made a lot of money out of lying to people. And he was so good at it that the government named that type of fraud after him. In 1920, he tricked thousands of New England residents into investing in a postage stamp speculation scheme. He promised investors that he could provide a 50% return in about 90 days. And each time a new investor gave him money, he'd use those funds to pay off the early investors to create the illusion that they were profiting from a legitimate business. Let me drop. So that's basically how a Ponzi scheme works, is that in the beginning, you're using the money you're collecting to make it appear like your investors are actually making a lot of money. And then once you reach a domino effect level of people throwing money at you, you just keep the money. At the height of the scam, he was raking in $250,000 a day, which is about $3 million in today's money. But it caught up with him, and he was charged with 86 counts of mail fraud. So, and now, we know about Ponzi schemes. And of course, there was a very famous one in recent history. So, and they still exist. I think people still try this. So always be aware. I'm going to give one more example here, which is kind of funny. It was back in the 1800s. Let me drop. There was really no accurate way of forecasting the weather. They hadn't really come up with a lot of ways to take the observations of what was going on and turn it into anything scientific. So in the late 1800s, there was this idea that came that weather, specifically rain, followed the plow, and that was the phrase. And what that meant is it was believed that if you did a lot of farming on a small area of land or a plot of land, that all that hard work, all of that work at turning the earth and planting brought the rain on. That it was actually the working of the soil and digging that brought the rain. And that the more you did, the more digging and plowing, the more rain would come. The problem with that, other than it being ridiculous, was that a lot of farmers started doing this like crazy. And the 10 years between 1870 and 1880, there happened to be a lot of rainfall. So it kind of incorrectly confirmed their theory. So people kept doing this and just started digging up huge plots of land, whether they were going to farm it or not, to try to bring on the rain. And they say that this overplowing is one of the things that contributed to the Great Dust Bowl, which happened soon after. So, but that's a more ridiculous one. So, yes, go out and dig a bunch of holes in your front yard and it'll rain. So, I don't know if that means maybe if I go out and fill in any holes that I find, it'll stop raining, because I think it's about time for it to stop raining. So, those are a few from history. Let me drop. Also as children, we come up with a lot of crazy ideas and theories, and I know everybody probably has a story to tell about that. I know I have a crazy one of my own, but I had a friend growing up who, when we were really little, believed that the way TVs worked was that there were little people inside of the TV and characters, and depending what you were watching, and little animals. And when you bought the TV, it came with certain people in it. And if you wanted to watch other shows, you had to go out and buy more people and put them in your TV. Obviously, that theory didn't last very long. I remember at some point when I was a little kid, and I told you mine was weird, I believed that Taylor pork roll, a type of cold cut, since my brothers were born in Levittown, Pennsylvania, and my family at that point was living in and around Trenton, and that's where pork roll is from. I believed that pork roll was made from sliced pig noses. That's a really strange one. So let's see if there's anybody else who wants to check in, and then we'll go around, and I want people to mention a falsehood that you know of, or comment on any of the ones that we've already mentioned. Something that people used to believe, or maybe something that you used to believe that now is not true. So are there any other check-ins for the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net? Please come now with your first name, your call sign, your first name, and your location. Please come now. All right. No one else? Like I said, this is going to be quick tonight. That's fine. So, Jim, KD2VAH, do you have anything to add to all of this? anything that you know of to add to the historical ones, a comment on any of it, or something that you used to believe, hopefully when you were a child.
That's going to be tough. I'm thinking, but I do know the old one, money can't bring happiness. It supposedly ain't true, but it sure is easier to cry in a Mercedes than it is a broke down VW bus. I'm sure there's 1,000 things. I'm sitting here with my magnifying thing headset, whatever it is that you wear, and I am soldering microphone ends because I was under the impression when I bought microphone extensions, I don't know why, but I thought they both had female ends. They don't. So I am putting a female end on place of a male end. And I just, anyway, something I believed in. I'll have to get back to you after it makes the big go round here.
That's all right. That's fine. I know there's so many of these out there. And, obviously we can talk about how, they used to think that the Earth was the center of the universe, and that everything revolved around the Earth. Well, there's a lot of people who still think that they're the center of the universe, but that's another story. And then, of course, the flat Earth. And what's interesting is that when you talk to a bona fide flat earther, and we can get on the subject of the Flat Earth Society, but they have a lot of scientific discussions that they'll get into to try to explain to you why this is the case and how it's been covered up all these years and things like that. So there's definitely some shining examples out there. It's certainly plenty of things that have been disproven over the years. So and we'll see. Like I said, we'll throw it around, or it might be a really short net, which is fine with me. It's been a tiring weekend. KB2GGF, Matt, do you have anything to add to the discussion, or any strange things you used to believe?
Good evening, Neil, and good evening, Ned. Hope you're all doing well. Let's see. Well, when I was a little kid, my grandmother used to tell me when I wore my galoshes into the house from out in the rain, she would say, "Don't wear your rubbers in the house. It'll hurt your eyes." Let me drop it. And even at age 5 or 6, I'd say, "Nana, what are you talking about?" She'd say, "Oh, well, when you walk across the carpet, the static electricity will jump over your boots and run up into your eyes. It'll hurt your eyes." And, I eventually figured out that, she didn't want me wearing my muddy boots in the house because I make a mess. But she couldn't tell me that. So I think a lot of misinformation involves manipulation, unfortunately. And that leads to Ponzi schemes and other stuff. But the other thing is just about, misconceptions. Trying honestly to understand something, and you just don't get a hold of it properly. I remember when I first moved to central New York, I would see a lot of bunker silos on dairy farms. And there aren't too many bunker silos in use around here, so I hadn't really seen it before. And I grew up down on Long Island, and moved to Kerhonkson when I was about 25, and then moved to central New York, and then moved back here. But anyway, when I first got to central New York, I'd see bunker silos, and they got the silage in there, and they got a tarp over them, and they got hundreds of old tires weighting it all down to make silage. I didn't know anything about it, and I'd be driving along, and everywhere I go, I'd see that, why do all these farmers have tire dumps? I thought they were all dumps for tires, and they, were somehow making money off of dumping old tires or something. But, it's just an honest misconception because I didn't know anything. So, information, misconception, manipulation, there's a lot of that going on. Back to net, KB2 GTF.
Well, that was a good one. It's a lot of interesting ones will come from our parents, our grandparents. God, there's so many like that. Can't remember some of the ones my mother had. I know there were definitely some out there. There was a common one that you shouldn't let the cat around a new baby because the cats like to steal their breath. Not really true. And then all the various, medical remedies that people, like putting butter on burns, or there was one I got told one time, I believe by my mother-in-law, when one of the babies was teething many years ago, that I should, dip a finger in a glass of whiskey and rub it on their gums. Okay, there is some basic truth to the fact that might work, but probably no. There's a lot of interesting stuff like that, and there's definitely marketing ones. There's actually a lot of argument as to whether baking soda actually absorbs odors in your refrigerator. It does have the ability to absorb some odors when you use it for cleaning, but as a passive odor absorber, there's been a lot of talk. It probably doesn't. But what a great marketing campaign, right? How many years did we think that, Maytag was the most reliable appliance brand in the world because of those lonely repairmen that we saw on TV? Great advertising, that's the way we came to learn that brand. But in reality, no more reliable than most of the other major appliance manufacturers. So let me drop. Copper and magnets and all sorts of other crazy remedies, and there's some odd ones too that can be scientifically argued, but it's really like divining rods. People who search for water with a Y-shaped fruit or nutwood stick, and as much as it's unscientific and it doesn't seem to make sense of why it would work. I know somebody who had success with it. Used to find water for people, and it doesn't make sense. But one of these nights, we are going to talk about the paranormal and the strange, and it's where falsehoods intersect with the paranormal is where things start getting very interesting. So there's a lot of that out there. So, all right. I don't have any other input from online here. Let's throw it back to Jim real quick and see if he came up with something.
Honestly, a couple things. One is I definitely understand the cat wide tail. And yeah, it's probably a wide tail. But it was explained to me by somebody smarter than me. And I'd say a whole lot smarter, but that don't take much. Basically, what do we feed kids? Milk. And what do cats do? They let dry milk off babies now. So I'm sure that's where that wide tail come in. Now, we switch over to the paranoia. Okay, you can tell me no, okay, but you're going to make me decide to believe you over my own eyes. So I don't know about that, brother.
Now, believe me, when we do get onto that subject, and we will, possibly for more than one net, I'm a man of science. I prefer to, believe in things that I can scientifically prove, or I can read about how they're scientifically proven. And obviously, a lot of paranormal things go contrary to that. But you're right. When you witness something yourself, it is really hard to say that's impossible. I have a couple of stories. A lot of people do. And they're things that just cannot be explained. And, and once again, it's like talking about politics, which we're not going to do. We don't usually talk about religion on the repeater as well, but it's similar. A lot of very scientific people have a lot of trouble with religion. Yet, there are aspects of it that are things that exist in reality that can't always be explained with science. So, just interesting stuff like that. And yeah, we'll go in that direction one night. Let me drop.
Comment.
Go ahead, Jim.
There's a very old saying, there's no atheist in a foxhole.
All righty. Well, one of the things that it's always been said that there are so many things that we take for granted today that if you went back in time and showed somebody 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, whatever it is, that technology, before it is understood, is indistinguishable from magic. And that's what a lot of things that we take for granted today would appear as to somebody who didn't understand how they work. And with respect to religion, one of the things that I always remind people of is, when you look at things from an outside point of view, is that 2,000 years ago, Christianity was a cult. 6,000 years ago, Judaism was a cult. Really, from someone else's point of view. And look where it's all gone. So it's just interesting. And once again, it's not a topic I want to bring up tonight, but it does relate to this in many ways, because there are certainly beliefs of thousands of years ago that do not exist anymore, that people do not believe and have pushed aside, whether they were religious beliefs, scientific beliefs, belief in magic, belief in sorcery, things like that. Not everything comes to light, but some things do, which is something I want to bring up next. Let me drop. So when we talk about falsehoods, sometimes that can travel into fiction. A fiction is not falsehood or a lie or deceit. Fiction is a story, a tale, something we know that didn't happen, something we know that isn't true, invented to entertain. So fiction is not malicious usually. It's something that gets you to think, or gets your brain moving, gets you to wonder. I love reading fiction. And there are places where technology and fiction cross over, and that's science fiction. So when we talk about reading futuristic novels or watching futuristic TV shows and movies, there was a lot of speculation in science many, many years ago, the things that have actually come to pass. So 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Captain Nemo basically had a nuclear submarine, something that there was really no understanding of them then, but something that's definitely come about. The Star Trek Communicator in the original Star Trek series. How many of us had Motorola flip phones or, the later tiny ones? And there's certainly a lot of other things that came out of science fiction that have come to pass. So it's interesting that some of the speculation on technology. What I wonder, and let me drop.
Comment.
Oh, hold on, Jim. Let me just finish the thought. What I wonder is if in any of the things that we've seen recently in the last 3 decades, let's say, in science fiction, what's the next thing, that actually will happen that you've seen? How much of this technology will actually come about? So go ahead, Jim.
Couple things. Dick Tracy's wristwatch. That was so far back that, and I got one sitting on my wrist, and I'm sure you do too. I'm not sure about Matt. Matt seems like an analog guy to me. The other thing is we talk about things we know aren't true. Let me drop. There was an old thing about 3 on a match. Well, it was scientifically proven why. Somebody light up a cigarette in the dark and your enemy sees it. He doesn't quite know where it's at. Second person that lights up the cigarette now, he can aim. Third person it's done with. Now, those things all proved out. But me being an Irishman, and a very superstitious Irishman, there are things I will not say, because I will not tempt whoever, I will not. And we all say, oh no, that's phony. But nobody's going to turn around and say, well, I can guarantee my house won't catch on fire tonight. Because the first thing you're going to think going to bed is, oh man, I just jinxed myself. Now, I'm pretty sure jinx isn't a scientific thing, but how many times do we do it? Or at least how many times do we blame it on that?
Oh, for sure. I hear it a lot too. And that's, when we start getting into talking about the strange and unusual, there's definitely things that have happened in my life that I can't explain. There's coincidence, but when it happens 3 times in a row, you start to wonder about things. That's for sure. And, it's something to look at. So anyway, what's next, right? It's one of the things working in technology, and I've said this many, many times over the last, almost 25 years that I have worked in technology. Oh, wow. Over 25 years now. Excuse me. Anyway, the reason why I love working in technology is because every day I read something or I experience something that makes me say, wow, every day. W2NDG on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Is there anybody else who'd like to check in before we do one last trip around, and then we'll probably close things out early tonight? All right, welcome, Mike. Is there anybody else? All right. Well, like I said, I was thinking about not doing this tonight because of the holiday weekend, but those of you that did come, thank you very much. Mike, I don't know how much you've been listening to so far, but we're talking about common falsehoods, whether scientific things that aren't believed anymore, marketing schemes. I mentioned the QWERTY typewriter and how it was actually designed to slow people down. Things that you might have believed when you were a child that you quickly learned were untrue, or things that were fiction that are now fact. So, any comments or anything you'd like to add to the discussion at this point?
Well, I do believe chocolate milk comes from brown cows. When I used to walk over crates, I always thought I was going to fall to my death. And as far as the cat situation, it is not rumored. It's called cribbing, and cats will smother a child. And just to top, and I've been listening since the beginning. And to top that off, I knew the bass player's dog, the Talking Heads, the woman bass player, the Talking Heads. gave up her dog because the dog was cribbing with her new baby. And I met this dog, and this dog would see me go to the riverbank, jump 12 feet in the air because there was no staircase was being worked on, come down to the water bank, and entertain me with a brick, which was about the size of the dog. Throw it out in the river 8 to 10 feet, and he would bring that brick back all day long.
Well, thanks for the add-ons, Mike. When you're talking about the greats, I was thinking, what? Step on a crack, break your back. And Jim, yeah, walking under a ladder, breaking a mirror, crossing a black cat's path. There's so many, and there's definitely people that believe strongly in that stuff. So let's throw it back up to the top, and just one more trip around. Any other comments or things anybody wants to add? And then I think we'll call it a night early. So, Jim, anything else tonight?
No, not offhand. I mean, when you say things that were bleak, I mean, how many, I think it's like Matt said, most of it was manipulation. Don't swallow gum. It stays in your gut for 7 years. You have no idea how many people still believe that. I mean, and we won't even go with the watermelon, Joe Girl watermelon. A lot of it was our parents. Like, my kids won't let me tell Luke that there's a Santa Claus. And I'm like, the kid is going to believe in the Santa Claus. Oh, now we're straight up lying to him. I've lied to you too, so I don't want to hear it. I mean, some things are okay. We tell kids go to sleep, there's no monsters. Well, guess what? There are monsters in this world. They're not what the kids are thinking, but we all know that there are monsters in this world. They're just bad things. So I'm not saying we should tell them that, but you know what I'm getting at.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. We create some of it by accident, Don't keep getting out of bed and, coming down the hall and waking up mommy and daddy because the monster in the closet will get you. And create some of our own problems ourselves that way. Anyway, all right. Matt, anything else you want to add to tonight's discussion on lies and fear and falsehoods?
I was reminded of something while you were talking, which is that weird stuff happens. You were saying there are things that you've witnessed that you can't explain. Well, most things we explain relate to other things we've known or seen, and sometimes weird things happen, unusual things happen, and perhaps people are superstitious or view it from some other viewpoint that allows them to assign some reason to it that works for them. But sometimes you just don't understand stuff because you've never encountered it before. And that doesn't make it true or untrue. It just makes it unknown. One step beyond. And with that happy note, back to Ned. KB2GGF.
W2NDG on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Matt, you had something popped into my head while you were talking about that. Have you ever watched the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy?
Oh yes, with the Land Rover with the nickname of the Antichrist.
With the bottle, that the whole movie revolved around, and all of the other interpretations from I forget his name, but the Aborigine who the film was about. Great movie, recommended to me by my mother, whose birthday would have been today if she was still with us. So that's good thoughts and thinking of a movie like that. And for those of you who might be listening who have never seen the movie, it's definitely worth a watch. Very, very low budget, but entertaining. The gods must be crazy. Mike, any closing comments? And something tells me you've probably seen that movie.
Yeah, I'm a big movie hound. It's easier than a book, and I don't want to cheat books either. But yeah, I've really enjoyed movies.
Well, it's a good place to pick up some of the things we're talking about. So, maybe there will be transporters and faster than light travel one of these days. All right. I'm going to see if there's any last minute check-ins, and then we'll close things up. This is Neil, W2NDG, on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Is there anybody else who would like to throw their call sign and their name at me before we shut things down for the night?
One last comment.
Sure. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I'm a firm believer that if you can have the idea, grasp the idea, the only thing that keeps us from acquiring the idea is work. Because the idea exists in body alone. And it's the physical part that is
Well, I think you're right. And there's been a number of people that say that a lot of discovery, a lot of invention anyway, comes from extremely hard work and a lot of research and a lot of trial and error. But one of my favorite expressions is that even although that hard work is what kind of leads to our inventions coming out of things that weren't there before, is that one of the most exciting phrases to hear in science, the one that heralds new discoveries, is not eureka, but that's funny. And it's true that the hard work is definitely one of the biggest things in bringing a concept that might have been fiction before to light. But so frequently, a lot of these things are discovered by complete accident. And that's something else maybe for another night. I mean, we can go through a number of accidental inventions. I'll throw one at everybody if they want to do some homework on it. But NutraSweet, aspartame, was a complete accidental discovery. You can read up on that one. And I know it's true because I heard it on the Paul Harvey show. And that's the rest of the story. This is W2NDG on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Let me drop for a pause here. The OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net is brought to you by the repeater of the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club. You do not need to be a member to participate in any of this club's activities. However, if you like what you hear here on our repeater, you can join. We'd love to have you as a member. You can find out information about the club at omarcclub.org, omarcclub.org. We run several regular nets on this repeater. There are 2 daily nets. Let me drop. Every morning at 8:35 a.m., Paul, AC2UQ, comes on the repeater and runs the 8:35 on the 8:05 net. Paul is also assisted by 2 other hams during the week, Rob on Wednesdays and Jed on Sundays. And it's a very informal, non-directed net where we just go around and in roundtable fashion talk about what's going on in our lives. What did we do? How are we doing? The net started at the beginning of the COVID lockdown because not everybody was doing okay. And as we say frequently, hams are social creatures, and it gave us a way to continue to be social without being able to meet in person. So I know it helped me greatly when I was stuck at home at first. And what a great concept and a great idea. Let me drop. Every evening at 6:30, a rotating group of hosts from the OMARC Club hosts the 6:30 check-in net, similar in concept to the 8:35 net, but a directed net where we check in and talk about what we did during the day, mention if we need any assistance with anything, and talk about what might be coming for us the next day. That's the 6:30 net. Every Thursday night, Dave, our club president, hosts the OMARC TechNet on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. It's a more ham radio oriented or technology oriented net where people come on and talk about something that might be mystifying them or a technical problem they're having with a piece of equipment. And we throw it out to the ham community and Dave and see if we can solve their issues. If we don't have a topic that takes root, then Dave usually has a topic of the night, or he spins the topic wheel, and we start talking about something that he suggests. And it's a good, lively, technical net. This net, as you know, the Science and Technology net, is not necessarily about ham radio technology, but about science in general. And Jim, K2BHM, and I come here every Sunday night at 8 p.m. and host this net. Jim hopefully will be back in a week or two, and we'll start moving on some radio-related science. Let me drop. This is W2NDG on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net, and we are returning the repeater to its regular activities. As usual, I'll hang out for 5 or 10 minutes if anybody wants to chat, but I'm going to end the video feed now. Everybody have a good night.